Hey, what's up, guys? Dylan Johnson from Soccer Mag here, and welcome back to Mixing with the DJs. Well, today it's just Mixing with the DJ because Dylan Jack conveniently had a Springbok press conference during this filming of this episode, so he will be wearing his Liverpool shirt in the next episode. We will make sure of it. I already have them here. I've brought them to the office. They'll be stay safe in my drawers until he comes. This weekend, just the overall narrative. Arsenal drop points, massive. Liverpool against Man United, obviously, I think I'll talk about that one a lot. Really exciting game. I think we actually now have seen the ability of Liverpool, even though, there'll be question marks over Man United now. Haaland again, hat-trick. It's getting crazy now, but it is what it is. And, yeah, Chelsea dropping points again. But I'll just go back, run it from the top. Arsenal versus Brighton, first game of the weekend. That was first half Arsenal Bukayo Saka was absolutely destroying Hinchelwood. It was amazing to watch. It was such an exciting game. And then I think Brighton, they grew into the game. I think the first 20 or so minutes was all Arsenal. Then Brighton started building a few chances, holding the ball longer. And then second half, everything changed when Declan Rice got sent off. And I'm conflicted over this one because firstly, I always say my rule is never give the referee a decision to make. But I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I can understand the frustration with that because I've watched it back a lot of times now, and it's if you're reading the book by the book, he kicks the ball away, but it's a bit crazy. I think it was Van Hecker took him out as well with that kick. I don't know why nothing happened to him. But yeah, that definitely changed the game. I think even though Arsenal still created chances, 10 men against Brighton, home or away is going to be difficult, and Brighton are looking dangerous this season. I think looking back retrospectively, the circumstances, that's a very solid point to take. Brighton are very good. They've already beaten Man United. So yeah, obviously disappointing to drop points already at this stage in the season, but I think over the 38 games, this wouldn't be where Arsenal lost the title. They got a massive 3 points last week against Villa. So, I think it kind of evens out. But yeah, I think that was a great game to watch from the neutral perspective. Just the Declan Rice incident changed things a bit. Let us know in the comments what you think of it. Was it a second yellow? Was it not? Do you think, I think it was Van Hecker, I stand corrected, should have been punished? And do you think the result would have been different had Declan Rice stayed on? Personally, I think it would have been. Moving on, Brentford versus Southampton. Not really too much to say about this game. I mean, Brentford won, and they won comfortably. It's exactly what we expected. Brian Mbeumo played fantastic. Southampton got their first goal of the season, but 3-1 Brentford. Not really much to say about that. Ivan Toney watching from the stands. Yeah, 3-1 Brentford. That's all I can say. The third game was Everton versus Bournemouth. And this was crazy. I mean, Everton, wow, what's going on there? I think they're surprising us for all the wrong reasons. 2-0 up. I think it was 2 goals or 3 goals in the last 10 minutes of the game. 87 to 96. What is going on with Everton? I think they're bottom of the table, 0 points, -8 goal difference. It's still a long way to go, but this is the opposite start pretty much I thought they would have had. I don't think they've played particularly difficult teams. I think what is Brighton, okay, that is difficult. Spurs, that is difficult. Bournemouth, it's one of those games where, if they want to sit comfortably mid-table, this is the kind of team they're going to have to beat at home or at least get a point. And it's not been a great start from Everton. I think their defense, which we've spoken about it a lot, Sean Dyche's sides, all, the peak that we've seen in the Premier League of him, getting Burnley to European football was built on the solid foundation of a defense. And Everton, for years now, even before Sean Dyche's defense before Sean Dyche, their defense has not been good enough. And to concede 3 essentially extra time goals against Bournemouth at home, being 2-0 up, I don't think the season's looking good for them. It's not looking good from the Toffees' perspective. The fourth game on Saturday, Ipswich versus Fulham, and 1-1. I think myself and Dill predicted an Ipswich-Fulham draw last week. I think Dill might have said a win. I think I said 1-1. And I think this is the perfect game to showcase what Ipswich are bringing to the Premier League this season. They will get points. And I think that comparing them to Southampton, to Leicester, and now Everton, I think, are now in the same bracket challenging for those positions. Ipswich, they play good. They play a good style of football. And they've got exciting players. I look at Leicester's squad. I look at Southampton's squad. And now Everton's squad. I look at Ipswich's, and they don't have big-name players, but they're young, they're exciting, they have a young, exciting manager, and Fulham are not a bad side. So we said that Fulham on paper, their squad has been together longer, they have bigger stars, and Ipswich, they played really well, they held their own, they got a massive point. Leicester versus Aston Villa, pretty much exactly what we expected to happen. Aston Villa, way better than Leicester. I think Leicester had a few good chances. But at the end of the day, I think Villa are stronger than them and Leicester are in serious trouble. We mentioned it, we touched on it last week. Their squad just isn't good enough to stay up in the Premier League. And they can't make changes now. But I think January is going to be huge. Even though it's only 3 games in, I do not see Leicester doing particularly well for the next 3-4 months. I think it could get scary quickly for them. That's just my thoughts on Leicester. I don't think it's a unique point of view. I think quite a lot of people are worried for their prospects of staying in the Premier League. Nottingham Forest versus Wolves. I think our predictions last week were pretty spot on with. We also said Forest versus Wolves would be a draw. And it was an exciting 1-1 in the fact that Forest had a lot of good chances. Wolves had some good chances. There were good goals that were scored. But it was a pretty standard Premier League 1-1. Not really much said, and I thought Bellegarde's goal was fantastic. But it was a solid point for each team, and I think there's not really much else to say. West Ham versus Man City, another Haaland hat-trick. I touched on it at the beginning. I think it's 6 goals now in the past 2 games, or 2 back-to-back hat-tricks. And he's, cruising to the Golden Boot at this point. And one interesting thing is that looking at it, all of the big stars have performed in the first opening 3 games. Mo Salah, we'll touch on that later, has been involved in all 3 opening games. Haaland, obviously involved. Cole Palmer, getting high numbers. Saka, getting good numbers. So this Premier League season has come out the blocks firing because all the big name players are yet to have an anonymous performance. So it's great to see. It's unsustainable to expect Haaland to score 3 goals every game. But going back to the performance without getting distracted, another standard day in the office for Man City. I think that's exactly what we expected to happen. West Ham's squad have improved, but they're nowhere near good enough to beat Man City. And, it was a good opportunity for them with Arsenal dropping points to get a gap early in the season. And I think this week won't be the title decider, but to get a gap after 3 games, it's what you want. So, another good 3 points, another Haaland hat-trick. Moving on. Chelsea versus Crystal Palace. And again, we've mentioned that Crystal Palace are a strong team, but Chelsea really should be taking 3 points at home here. And I think it goes back to they played well in the first half, but going back to the problems from last season, it's just the inconsistency. Get beaten by Man City, destroy Wolves, then at home against Palace, a team who haven't started the season particularly well, even though they've got good players and we know their manager's good, and they ended last season well, and they don't get 3 points. These are the games where if you want to be top 4, you have to win. And looking at the table now, it is extremely competitive. So Liverpool and City top on 9 points each. Then Brighton, Arsenal, Newcastle, all on 7 points. Chelsea find themselves in 11th, already 3 points behind 5th place. And 3 points is nothing. But it's just that it's the inconsistency that you can't be letting the gap be this big already, especially with the games that they've played. I know Man City was difficult. The Wolves result was good, but you have to get 3 points against Palace at home. And I think that's the area where they have to improve. After the international break, they're playing Bournemouth away from home. That's a tough fixture. So at home, points are non-negotiable unless, you're playing Man City, who you should hopefully get a draw, or Arsenal, etc. But these mid-table teams, if you expect to finish in the top four, you have to be taking these 3 points every week. The second last game, I thought was probably the most exciting game of the weekend from a non-biased perspective. Newcastle versus Spurs at Newcastle. And particularly the second half, I thought it was an outrageous game. It was completely end-to-end in the fact that Spurs were pushing so hard and Isak and Gordon were preying on the halfway line, trying to get the most out of the high line, and they did. I think the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half, the chances that Spurs had to then, the basketball-esque sort of the way they played, then Isak and Gordon charging, trying to get chances. Eventually, Isak got his goal. But Spurs hit the post, I think it was 2 or 3 times. I just loved watching that game. I thought Spurs were so unlucky to not get at least one more goal. I think the Dan Burn own goal, even looking at that, Dan Burn, you could have let that go. So, yeah, I think Spurs had over 20 shots on target and all they had to show for it was one own goal. I really enjoyed watching that game. And I think Spurs are going to be an exciting team to watch now. I think it's the same as how they started last season. So the top 6, top 7 is incredibly competitive. The fact that Spurs are already sitting in 10th, it's crazy to me because I don't think they've played badly so far this season. The last game, the big boy, Manchester United versus Liverpool at Old Trafford. Dill's here to defend his team, so I'm going to tear into them. I think the first 5 minutes I was worried with the way United started, but as the game settled, Liverpool were the clear, they just were way better. I think the narrative that's going around is that Arne Slot's been there for, 3-4 months. Erik ten Hag's been there for two and a bit years. He's in his 3rd season, spent almost £600 million. The difference shouldn't be as big as it is. And you can say that Arne Slot inherited a better squad, which he did. But the fact that Erik ten Hag, you can't actually see a philosophy, the way he plays. There's no style of play. The game was so messy from United's perspective. I think in midfield, they got completely outplayed. And Casemiro had an all-time stinker. But to be fair to him, what's he going to do? I think the signs have been there since last season. He can't run the whole midfield by himself. It's like Fabinho when Fabinho was finished, not last season, the season before. You're asking a guy to run the whole game, but you already know he can't. And the mistakes he made as well were just, he's off the pace. And I think with Ugarte coming in now, that change has to be made. But I look at that midfield and I think, okay, first 2 boxes are ticked are Kobbie Mainoo and Manuel Ugarte. But then who plays with Mason Mount injured? Who's the third midfielder? Casemiro is probably still going to have to be involved because all respect to Collier that came on. That was his debut. He was thrown to the dogs coming on at halftime for Casemiro at Old Trafford against Liverpool. Man United was stinking it up. So it's unfair to expect him now to come in and have a midfield of Mainoo, 19 years old, him 18 years old, and Ugarte, who hasn't played for Man United, hasn't played a minute in the Premier League. I think that's a recipe for disaster. And as bad as Casemiro is, I don't see what alternative they have with Mason Mount being injured. And I don't think Bruno will play there. Maybe you'll have to, but then what? Højlund's still injured. What do they do with the front 3? What's going on with Marcus Rashford? Garnacho wasn't that effective either. Xerxes had some good chances. Alisson made a good save. I think the best part of United, De Ligt had a really strong first 20 or 30 minutes. But the problem wasn't the back 4. I think they didn't do badly. They just exposed. Every time Liverpool won the ball back in midfield, Jota, Salah, Szoboszlai, Diaz, Gravenberch were running directly at the centre-backs. There was nothing they could do. They were completely exposed. They were outnumbered. And, as much as I don't really like Lisandro Martinez, I have to cut him some slack in that he didn't have any help. Him and De Ligt were completely thrown. I'm not going to say thrown to the dogs again, but they really didn't have much of a chance there. So going forward for United, like I said, the midfield is a massive problem. I don't see how it improves in the short term because of the players that are injured, the players that are missing. But also just looking at United's bench, it's actually scary how little depth they have on the bench. The options that Erik ten Hag has to change a game, I mean, besides Diallo, really, I don't really know what. He's bringing on Harry Maguire and he's 2-0 down. Why? Because he doesn't have any other options. So, yeah, I think I have sympathy for Erik ten Hag because his job is almost impossible now because he got absolutely destroyed and the pressure's on. And it almost feels like, the mistakes that they made, that's not coaching. That's just players making stupid errors, getting bossed in the wrong areas of the pitch. Yeah, I feel bad for him because it wasn't systemic errors that was conceding goals. Maybe you could say that midfielders being vulnerable in certain positions, but Casemiro misplacing a pass and Casemiro running up the field from deep. Kobe Mainoo maybe taking a bit too long on the ball. That's not Erik ten Hag's fault, but he will bear the brunt of the blame for it. But from Liverpool's perspective, I was talking too much on the negative. I was really impressed. I think that was a game where now you can have confidence that this Liverpool team mean business. I think before they weren't really tested against Ipswich, against Brentford. But this game at Old Trafford, I think Arne Slot's the first Liverpool manager to beat United at Old Trafford in his first game in almost 100 years. And I think the first manager to beat United in his first game since, I think it was Bill Shankly or something in the 70s or 60s or whatever it was. I apologize for not getting the exact number. But I think looking at Ryan Gravenberch answered every question that we had. Could he handle the pressure of being in that midfield with Alexis McAllister? And wow, I think Ryan Gravenberch was amazing. I don't even know who Zubimendi is anymore. I've completely forgotten about him. Ryan Gravenberch is the answer. Just hoping he can stay fit. I think Trent played really well. It's a pity his goal was ruled out because that celebration would have been iconic. But he got the 3-0 in, so that's what we're happy with. Salah, standard Salah performance against Man United. Once again, sensational. 2 assists, 1 goal. Luis Diaz, he's adding output to his game. And I couldn't be happier. People wanted to sell him for Anthony Gordon. But, I think these first 3 games, if he can just, maintain his consistency. I'm not asking him to get 30 goals this season. I just want him to get as close to 15 as possible. I think he's made a great start. Jota had a relatively quiet performance, but you can't do everything every game. Szoboszlai, McAllister, honestly, I can't really fault anyone. I thought Konate and Van Dijk were excellent. Alisson, some crucial saves. He didn't have to do much, but he performed when we needed him to. So yeah, I think I'm not saying Liverpool are competing for the title. I think it's too soon to say that. But they've passed every test. At every level they've had to elevate, and they've done it, and they've comfortably done it. They haven't conceded a goal. They've gone to Old Trafford, and Man United were extremely confident going into this game. I know they just lost to Brighton, but if you ask any Man United fan, they thought there was a huge chance of them winning that game. And they got completely played off the pitch. And statistically, it looks close, but I think if you actually watch that game, bar the first 20 minutes, Liverpool were in complete control. And anything United got maybe was on the counter or because Liverpool were kind of letting them, So I think that's everything for the review from Game Week 3. It is the international break, so we're not going to be focusing on the Premier League. Next episode, we will be doing a review of the Champions League fixtures. We'll be breaking down how it works as it is confusing. It's brand new. So stay tuned. That should be coming out later this week. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.